go any further, I'd like to just make an announcement about the pre-election advice. Should be restrained from anybody making any sort of comments on parties in it. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at public meetings. I have not received notice that members or invited attendees wish to use the Welsh language today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English. Please can you make sure all your mobile phones are turned off. If the fire alarm is scheduled for today, if there should be a sound, please follow the green signs at the exit to the car park. When speaking, please make sure that your microphones are on. Then we go on to item agenda 1. Apologies for absence.
Apologies received from Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Number 2, any declarations of interest? There's none. Then we move on to item agenda 3, which is minutes of the licensing committee for the 20th of October. Oh. January. That's part of the minutes, yeah. Right, so we go through item agenda 4, and we go through pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could someone move that as a true and accurate account? Thank you, Councillor Parish. Just for accuracy again, we go through from pages 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Any matters arising from any of the meetings? Oh, welcome, Councillor Brooks. I'm sorry, we weren't sure how long you were going to be, so
I was having a competition with the bin body, and I decided to let the bin body
right.
go. Bigger than mine.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think we really need to go back, if you like, because obviously to agenda item 3, because they would propose that, if you like, and number 4 is decision on the village green. And I'm not sure if there needs to be any information. If you got it 3, then
Sorry, I'll propose that the minutes of the 26th of January are correct, if you like, to make sure that that's done. A seconder.
That's it.
Are there any other comments or matters arising? Just before we move on, I just want to point out that we are reversing the agenda, the attendance with the minutes. The minutes number 4 will be switched with the minutes in number 5. So that means that we're not going to hold people back. It'll be just left for the committee.
Chair, can I come in at this stage just to be of assistance? That's all. The minutes are on page 3. What you will find, members, is that agenda item number 4 is the Town and Village Green application. This is being heard at the end of the meeting today because a subcommittee has to hear this. and therefore agenda item 5 at page 33 will be addressed first, and the quarterly report, and then we will go towards agenda item number 4. I apologise about the order of this.
So if we all move on to page 33, the quarterly licensing update. I think Simone has given the report this morning. Okay, thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of today's report is to update the committee on all licensing matters for the fourth quarter, 2016-17, this being the months of January, February and March 2017. The recommendations are that the committee note and comment on the contents of this report, that the committee note the activity report for the fourth and final quarter of 2016-17, and that the committee note the activity report for the annual period 2016-17. And the background is this report is to update the committee on all licensing matters, which include licences issued, complaints and service requests in the fourth quarter of 2016-17 period. Alcohol and entertainment. There have been 14 complaints in relation to the licensed premises during this, and that should read fourth quarter. These complaints have included issues such as breaches of licensing hours and conditions, selling hot food after 11 p.m. without a licence, noise, nuisance, disorder and underage sales. The licensing officer has issued 6 warning letters in relation to future conduct at licensed premises, and 2 noise nuisance complaints have been passed to environmental health for investigation. The licensing officer is currently working with the licensed premises, putting into place an action plan to prevent any further disorder at a licensed club premises, and a review of that plan is due to take place with members of the club committee in April. In relation to the other complaints received, meetings with the licence holders and DPS have taken place, and suitable advice. The licensing team has organised a multi-agency evening operation in conjunction with Headley Gwent Police. 16-year-old police cadets were issued in a test purchasing exercise to find out if alcohol was being sold to underage persons at 8 licensed premises. Out of 4 shops visited, 2 sold alcohol to the 16-year-old police cadets. 4 public houses were visited, and out of those 4, 2 sold alcohol to the cadets. Fixed penalty notices have been issued by the Police Harm Prevention Licensing Officer to each of the persons who sold the alcohol. The licensing officer at TCBC is now working with each of the 4 premises that sold to ensure that due diligence is in place by ensuring that staff are trained so that future sales to underage persons are not permitted.
I think it's very worrying that 4 premises in total were selling alcohol to underage. I mean, I know you've dealt with it, but it is worrying when licence holders disregard, you know, the age limit. I think, you know, I know it's hard work for you, you know, to keep up with it, and these exercises, if we weren't doing these, we wouldn't find out about it, really. So, you know, I'm trying to stress the importance of the exercises to do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I just point out that the officer who undertook those investigations has worked more evening enforcement since Christmas than we ever have, because there were complaints that had come through in relation to those. So she's not only worked through her week hours, she's also worked quite a few weekends to try and to resolve the issues within Torvine. So, as part of the same operation, 4 licensed club premises were visited to see if they were compliant with the restrictions of their club premises certificates. Premises that hold this type of certificate can only provide licensable activities to members and bona fide guests. Out of the 4 premises visited, all 4 sold alcohol to plainclothes police officers who were non-members. The licensing officer is currently working with each of the clubs to advise of the findings and to provide advice on obtaining a premises licence or temporary event notice to cater for the provision of licensable activities to the general public. Joint work by the licensing officers in both Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent licensing teams continue and is proving to be beneficial for the service. Late fees. There were 2 premises that had not paid their annual fee by the due date during the last quarter. All 2 premises in relation to licences issued under the Licensing Act 2003. These have now all made the appropriate payments following interventions by licensing officers. Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing. There have been 20 taxi-related complaints during this 4th quarter. Most complaints were minor in nature and easily resolved. These complaints include complaints of private hire vehicles not being sign-written, 1 driver waiting for a customer outside a complainant's home with loud music blaring from the vehicle, and 1 vehicle with a Torfaen-issued roundel missing from the side of the vehicle. There was also a complaint that the driver had charged an excessive amount of money after a customer had tipped Prosecco on the seat of his vehicle. The customer argued that the driver had demanded the money to have the vehicle cleaned, but the customer stated that there was not a huge amount of alcohol tipped on the seat. The officer explained to the customer that the vehicle would have need to have been taken out of service for the seat to have been cleaned, resulting in loss of wages for the driver. The incident occurred on a Saturday evening, so the loss would be quite hefty. The customer had not realised the implications and knock-on effects of spilling alcohol in a licensed vehicle. A further complaint was received regarding a licensed driver's medical fitness and his ability to drive licensed vehicles. The licensing officer completed an investigation which included speaking to complainants, the driver's employer, taxi office staff and the driver's doctor. The complaint was fully resolved with confirmation that the driver had received medical treatment and any issues were now settled. Complaints of this nature can be time-consuming, but full investigation is essential to ensure safety of the public whilst travelling in licensed vehicles. The licensing officer has carried out taxi enforcement evenings in partnership with Gwent Police in this 4th quarter. The operations resulted in no vehicles being taken off the road for serious defects. This is the 2nd evening enforcement which has resulted in no vehicles being taken off the road, which clearly shows the standard of vehicles currently licensed within the Borough of Torfaen. A licensing officer has worked with Headley Gwent Police on 2 separate occasions in this quarter to move parked vehicles off taxi ranks in the Torfaen area. The licensing officer has received a high number of complaints from licensed trade to say that they are unable to work from the taxi ranks safely because of shoppers parking on the ranks. The senior officer and officers of the police attended at the ranks in Pontypool and Cwmbran and moved on vehicles trying to park and issued parking tickets to vehicles already parked on the rank. Both operations were publicised via social media to notify the public of the outcome of parking on a taxi rank. Child sexual exploitation and licensing. The licensing team have worked with other Gwent licensing authorities and Headley Gwent Police to deliver safeguarding training to staff at alcohol licensed premises. 4 training sessions were arranged in collaboration with Blaenau Gwent. 2 of the sessions were held in Torfaen. Are we allowed to carry on? In Torfaen, with 79 licensees and staff from licensed premises in the Torfaen area attending. Feedback from those that have attended have been positive, and several matters have already been reported to the safeguarding team for further investigation. New taxi driver applicants are required to sit the safeguarding training as part of the application process.
Chair, can I ask a question there, please? Simone, can you just clarify that the new taxi drivers, do they have to sit the safeguarding training before they get their licence, or are they given a period of time? So
we've incorporated it into the knowledge test. They sit the knowledge test, they pass the knowledge test, they then go on to sit the safeguarding. What we have decided is that once they've passed the knowledge test, there has been a small period of time where sometimes they have to wait for the safeguarding. So, because the DBS checks and everything takes so long, we allow them to apply for their licence, but that licence won't be issued to them until that safeguarding is undertaken.
Yes, great, thanks.
Okay. Gambling, gaming and lotteries. Work is still ongoing in relation to the implementation of local risk assessment policies as required by the Gambling Act 2005. Torfaen and Blaen y Gwent officers are working together to achieve this. The licensing officer has carried out 2 joint visits with the compliance manager from the Gambling Commission during this final quarter of the year. A number of issues were found at one of the premises, and the licensing officer is working with the compliance manager to resolve these matters. Smoking in enclosed public places, there have been no smoking complaints this quarter. Street trading, there have been 2 complaints in relation to street trading this quarter. 1 complaint was in relation to an unlicensed trader, and the other complaint was from a gentleman who had been refused planning to site his van in the area of Torfaen. Both complaints have been investigated and resolved. Charity collections. There have been 1 complaint relating to charity collections in this quarter. A visit by officers showed that the collecting company had circumnavigated the existing law by suggesting a payment for leaflets rather than asking for a direct charitable contribution. This form of collection is rare, but has occurred across Gwent and elsewhere, and we are now continuing to investigate what, if any, controls can be put in place. Scrap metal. There have been 5 complaints in relation to scrap metal this quarter. 4 complaints were from public in relation to collections being undertaken in residential areas. All of the complaints concerned and that the collectors were unlicensed. Investigation showed that 2 collectors were licensed and valid. 1 collector could not be traced as the information provided was incorrect, and the 4th complaint is still under investigation. A 5th complaint was received from a police officer and is covered in prosecutions below. Animal establishment licensing. We have received 1 complaint during this quarter regarding the temperature of a pet shop which has not been substantiated. We have now received a renewal application for a zoo in respect of Green Meadow Community Farm. The presence of a deer and a rhea places the farm within the remit of zoo licensing legislation. Although negotiations are currently underway with the Welsh Office regarding the possibility of a full or partial dispensation, there is currently a partial dispensation.
Is there a cost implication for licences for zoos?
They have to buy the licence, yes. They have to pay for the licence from the local authority.
Right, right. Is it costly? Because, I mean, keeping animals is a serious, you know, it's,
This is an area that is covered by Alison Hughes.
Right.
So although it has been included in the report because it is work that she's been doing, I personally don't cover the area. But if you have any questions in relation to animal licensing, then I can obviously take those questions and I can feed back to you at a later time.
No. You know, about the cost implications. And it says here there is a possibility of full or partial dispensation. Does that mean it because it's so few animals there? You don't know. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks.
The legislation around much of this work is due to change considerably.
So,
The legislation around much of this work is due to change considerably in England in April 2018, but there continues to be no news on whether Wales will follow suit. Meetings with Welsh-based animal charities have been held to promote the need for change in Wales. The legislative changes in England will impact on how services are delivered in Wales, even if this legislation is not adopted locally. In particular, it is likely that new model licensing conditions will need to be adopted, and that staff will need to receive additional training so that they can demonstrate competency. Service requests. There are 51 service requests recorded this quarter. A service request is recorded when an officer spends time giving out advice or helping with an application. It is any work that is completed within licensing that is not a visit or a complaint. The number of service requests have risen sharply since the team have started recording advice given. This is simply due to the fact that the licensing administrative officer has started recording telephone calls and callers to reception who require advice or assistance. They have continued to receive a number of freedom of information requests, which are dealt with promptly. We have also had a subject access request regarding a licensed premises in Pontypool that was the subject of a licensing panel hearing. This has required the licensing team and another team to produce all documentation and correspondence in relation to the licensee and the premises. Prosecution and appeals. There have been no prosecutions within this quarter. An officer of Headley Gwent Police has provided information to the licensing section in relation to an unlicensed scrap metal collector, which may well result in a prosecution being taken. The committee will be updated at the next committee hearing. Delegated decisions. There have been 2 delegated decisions this quarter. One decision was in relation to a Hackney Carriage proprietor who had failed to renew his vehicle licence. The Chief Officer sent this to be heard before a licensing panel and will be covered in panel hearings below. A second delegated decision in relation to a previously revoked driver is still ongoing. The committee will be updated with the outcome of the decision in the next committee hearing. Licensing panel hearings. There has been 1 panel hearing this quarter in relation to a Hackney Carriage vehicle proprietor who failed to renew his licence on time. The information, evidence and case law was presented to the panel and the decision was made that the gentleman could renew his licence on this occasion. The panel made it clear that every instance of this nature would be decided on an individual basis and in regard to the information and circumstances presented to the panel at that time. Constitution, policies and procedures. A comparison of the Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent constitutions is now underway, with a view to reviewing whether any changes are required overall and identifying any significant differences between the authorities. Where potential areas of change are identified, these will be subject to legal and member approval. A review of 3 policies is underway for taxi licensing, street trading and scrap metal dealers. 2 new policies are also under development for sex establishments and charity collections, which will formalise existing arrangements. They are being developed in conjunction with Blaenau Gwent CBC, although there will continue to be some differences between the authorities in terms of standards and working practices. To underpin the policies and other work, procedural documents are also being developed as required. 2 on licensing hearings and fee settings are currently in development. Immigration Act. The section applying to premises licensed under the Licensing Act 2003 comes into force on the 6th of April 2017, and applying for, holding a licence to sell alcohol or late-night refreshment will then be conditional on not breaching immigration laws, including employing illegal workers. This will require the authority to make immigration checks on certain new applicants, but will not affect existing businesses or licensees. Additional training for reception and other officers from the business support team has been arranged with the Immigration Service, who have offered this for free on this occasion. The training presentation is attached to Appendix A. Following concerns expressed by members of this committee and in consultation with the legal team, we are now seeking to do a Home Office check and obtain a certificate of good conduct from their home country, where a standard DBS check will not reveal sufficient history. It is anticipated that these additional checks will apply to renewals for currently licensed drivers and on new driver applications. Licensing team performance. The team performance plan is attached. The activity report for the licensing team is attached at Appendix B. There have been a high number of complaints received by the team again during this 3rd quarter. That should read fourth quarter. The team continue to be very busy and are ensuring that the service to the public is provided at a high standard. Collaboration between Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen. The collaboration is continuing to move forward and officers continue to work together, carry out enforcement visits, joint investigations and policy reviews. There have also been discussions in relation to streamlining both authorities' computer systems to ensure similarity between both. The action to be taken following decision, the suggestions and directions of the committee will be followed by officers. The monitoring and evaluation, the licensing team will continue to review its operation procedures and all policies to ensure that the authority delivers the best service to the public. The conclusion summary is that the team are dealing with complaints and service requests on a priority basis, as well as a number of delegated decisions and prosecutions. The recommendations are that the committee note and comment on the contents of this report, that the committee notes the activity report for the fourth and final quarter, and that the committee notes the activity report for the annual period 2016-17. That is the end of my report, Chair.
Thank you, Simone, for that. Does any member would like to ask any questions?
If we can go back to the licensing panel sharing, there's usually some additional report which is accompanied to this committee, if you like, and I can't see it as such, if you like, in regarding the outcome, etc., and if I can, and what took place.
Do you mean the set of minutes? The set of minutes will be here. They'll be given to the next committee meeting due to a short time. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions from anybody of the panel?
If we could
Thank you,
just
Simone.
scrutinise the activity report, Chair. It is the final quarter, so it is the final figures for the year.
Okay, Simone, are you going to do this? Or do you just want to go through it?
Chair, I just wanted to point out that it is the final quarter. It's been a difficult year for us. Our complaints have been very, very high. As you know, we've lost Steve Bendel. He was a very operational manager. His loss has been felt by the team greatly. But can I point out that the figures are very good. The only thing that we haven't achieved is the scrap metal dealers inspections, which I have pointed out before is a very, very difficult area. I write out to the scrap metal collectors and request that they come in. I think the coming year now we are going to have to look at dealing with that in a different way. But everything else has been achieved and overachieved, which is very good for us as a team, especially since our numbers have been cut. So I think the final quarter it shows that we've worked very hard to achieve those figures.
Chair, can I comment, please? Chair, considering the turmoil there has been with the licensing team over these last 12 months and all the extra work they've had, the fact that they've managed to maintain and exceed the number of inspections, we as a committee should congratulate the actual team, please.
I was going to say the same thing, actually. You know, the committee should show, that we congratulate the team because they have worked hard.
Steve?
Well, yes, Chair. Naturally, I would endorse both the two former speakers in regard to this. In fact, I'm very pleasantly surprised, quite frankly, given the changes that have occurred with staff members and everything. I think this is all credit to them for having not just achieved what they set out to do, but to do even more. And the points have already been made by my other two colleagues, and I would support them wholeheartedly. The difficulty I understand with the scrap metal companies that collect, I can understand the difficulty in getting hold of them, although I have to say I have the telephone number of one of them. He gave me his telephone number, so when I need anything moved, I just phone him up. But at the end of the day, I can well understand it. And this is, I'm coming to the point that I want to make. I don't see now, these days, so many scrap metal collectors. In fact, somebody in the street next to me actually said to me the other day, how can I get rid of this? I think it was some sort of washing machine. I think it was a washing machine. I can't really remember. As it happened, I did ring the person in question, and I noticed it's gone, so I assumed that he'd picked it up. So are there as many scrap dealers operating as there were, should we say, a year or two ago?
No, definitely not. We had a 3-year renewal process just recently, and the numbers have dropped dramatically. But you will note that there have been a number of complaints in relation to scrap metal, and what has happened over the last 6 months is that the price of scrap metal is now on the rise again. So there are issues that are being brought to our attention again that we have to deal with. But the number of scrap metal collectors has definitely dropped.
Rob?
Yes. Obviously, we're looking at the Q4 and over the last year, the figures. Moving forward, who has set the targets for 17 and 18, and are they going to be more stringent than the targets which are set for 16 to 17?
I've actually just checked the targets recently, and they are the same. So the targets will be the same. The percentages change slightly for the number of, for example, street traders that we may have licensed. It may change through the year, but the amount of inspections that we are due to carry out are the same.
And again, are you going to be able to cope, knowing the size of the team for the forthcoming year, to actually, obviously, not only meet those targets again, but exceed them again?
Well, I hope so. I hope that we can carry on going the way we are. I mentioned earlier that the officer that was dealing with the licensed premises has worked an awful lot of evenings just recently to make sure that the pubs and clubs and the complaints in relation to that they are dealt with. I myself work evenings. I've got evenings planned coming up now for the next few weeks to go out and work with the officers, and you know, we are happy to do that. I think we will need to revisit these figures. We'll go through perhaps the first quarter, halfway through, and we'll see where we are then. And if we do need to revisit, then obviously we'll come back to yourselves and we can discuss that then.
And who sets the targets?
I believe that Alison Hughes set them this year. When the committee first started, a very long time ago, there was a lot of consultation with the members, and a decision was made on what we should be looking at, what we should be achieving, where we should go from that. And I know that Steve worked and decided what figures we should hit and what was obtainable. And a few years back we did lose a licensing officer, so the figures dropped slightly then. But I mean, it's work in progress, isn't it? We'll have to go the next quarter or two and see how we're doing. If it is unobtainable, then obviously we'll come to yourselves and discuss that with you.
And I'm not sure if basically the targets to begin with ought to be agreed by the committee going forward. I know that obviously the officers can look into whether or not they're going to be achievable or not, but from my perspective, I would like to have known what the targets are for the forthcoming year, just to encourage you, if you like, more than anything. If you like, that's all.
So would you suggest that on the third quarter we look at what we are achieving then and maybe decide on what we should set then for the beginning of the first, because obviously the fourth quarter is a little late?
Yeah, definitely, because obviously we are the licensing committee as such, and so it would be good to know moving forward what the targets are for the forthcoming year, simple as that, and whether or not we are progressing, or whether there needs to be any form of additional resources put in to ensure that the targets are met.
I'd never say no to additional resources. Just make that clear. But that's not a problem at all. We can write that into the third quarter. I think it's a good idea.
Chair, I just want to say licensing committee would like to say congratulations to the licensing team. Despite Mr. Binda left the authority, and he is a big asset of authority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simone. Thank you for your report. And could you go back to to everyone dealing with licensing and give them our tremendous thanks for all the outstanding work they're doing. And the way that Torvine is going forward, with all the further development of houses that affects all of us, I think that we're going to have to be flexible with this, with getting figures as Torvine's growing bigger. There's a lot more houses. We might have to, keep an eye on everything like that. But could you thank all the licensing team? We do appreciate all the work you do, Simone. Thank you.
I will do, Chair, and it does make a difference to us as a team when we're appreciated and the work that we do is appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I can make a suggestion at this stage. The next report is at page 9. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult to read at the bottom of the report. But perhaps I can suggest we do this. We stop the webcast. Which means then that the members who aren't on the subcommittee can leave. I will also then go and get to the officer who's presenting this report, and we can then reconvene, we can start the webcast and the report can be presented.
Will that webcast be reported back to the full committee again, or can the people or the members who leave now, can they go and carry on with their daily business? The
decision will be reported back to full committee.
Full committee today?
No,
later.
Later.
That's fine.
Can I just ask a question for clarity here? I don't think that I'm on the Village Green Committee. So, are you asking us to stay until that meeting's over for any reason?
No.
Good. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, you're free to leave. Be reported back to full committee on the next occasion. Thank you very much.
Could I just thank everyone off the committee? I know it's probably our last meeting together, and we don't know if we'll all be back or if some of us will or won't be back. Yeah. But I would like to thank everyone for their contributions. It's a good committee. It's a committee that we work for the people of Torvine. There's no party politics whatsoever in this committee, and it's for the best. And we'd like to thank the licensing team for all the work they do. I'd also like to thank, I know we still got Justine to also know, but I'd like to thank Justine and our ma'am, Karen Mayo, and all the officers for all the help that they've given us, or given me and me over this last 5 years. For everyone that's campaigning for the elections, I'd like to wish you good luck, and those of you that want to get back, I hope that we do get back. Thank you.
Well, Chair, I think that of everyone sat here, I think all bar myself are seeking re-election to the authority. On my return to this authority 5 years ago, I found it to be quite different to what I'd experienced in the many years before that I was a member. But it's been an interesting situation in those years. When you were first put on committees and all the rest of this, particularly committees that didn't exist in my former day, it was going to be a challenge. And what I'd like to say, because I don't think that I'll probably speak at a Torvine County Borough Council meeting again. I don't think there's any more now, is there? Or is there any more that we don't know about? But I would like to turn around and put it on public record. I have enjoyed all of it. The staff here at Torvine County Borough Council are very good. There's no question about that. We have some hugely talented people. We've lost some hugely talented people who have raised on in age like me. But I feel that it gives me this opportunity, if you like, to turn around and to thank everybody. Everybody has been extremely helpful, and I know that our sort of officers that looks after us sort of directly, Chris and Geraint and Karen and Jackie, and now tell me who I've missed so as I can mention them. Who have I missed? Rachel, yeah. Because they've been so good and very, very helpful indeed. So thanks to everybody for that. People have said to me, you're going to miss it all, Steve. I don't think so. This is very, very, very hard work. And those that are coming here for the next term, for 5 years, this is no holiday. It's very, very hard work to do it, and it's very, very, very time consuming. And I just wish everybody that's coming back here, I don't care what party they are representing, in the main, and the most important thing is that they are representing the people of the County Borough of Torfaen. Once the election is over, you must all work together, because without that, nothing will ever move forward. So I wish everybody the best of luck in the coming election. I'm sorry I won't be about on the day, but nevertheless, I wish you all the best of luck.
Okay, so we'll just
You can give me 5 minutes. I'm just going to-
So now, there we are. Thank you, Chair. You'll see this is a report for the subcommittee in respect of an application for town and village green status relating to the circle in Bryn Wern. You will recall that I think it's nearly 2.5, 3 years now. We did some training here where we had external barristers came along, and I think Councillor Parish has had some training a bit more recently than that. What you recall from that is that anybody can make an application for a town and village green on Form 44, so long as certain criteria are made out. The application's made under the Commons Act 2006, and in respect of which the procedures for determining that in Wales are governed by the Commons Registration of Village Greens Regulations 2007. Essentially, most of these applications are made under Section 15, and the grounds referred to are these, is that a significant number of inhabitants of any locality or any neighbourhood within a locality have indulged as of right in lawful sports and pastimes on the land for a period of at least 20 years. I think the key there is as of right, as opposed to anything else. So by right, for example, would be say if an area of land was fenced off and the owner was allowing access over a period of time, that wouldn't be met, that wouldn't meet the criteria under here. It has to be something that people have not been prevented or not been given a right to enter. What happens then, from our perspective as a local authority, is once we've received an application that's properly made out, we have to ascertain who the landowner is. It very often is either the local authority itself, an institutional landlord or owner of property, for example, like an insurance company, or in this case, it was a local RSL, Bron Avon. What we're obliged to do then is to advertise both at the site in question and in local media and on the council's website for any potential objectors. As a result of those adverts, and indeed my direct contact with Bron Avon, no objectors either from the local community, local residents, and somewhat unusually in this case, even the landowner didn't raise any objections to the application. So what would normally be the case is I would be presenting to you a report from an independent inspector further to an independent inquiry. We took the view that as nobody was objecting, especially the landowner, did the council need to go to the additional expense of conducting a public inquiry? We had to weigh that against, of course, our obligations in asking you as a committee to make a decision, open and transparent, and to have something to base that decision upon. So we took Council's opinion as to whether, firstly, we needed to hold a public inquiry in light of the fact that the landowner was not objecting, and whether he thought, if the answer to that was no, that the grounds would be made out for a proper submission to you to allow the application. So you will see that I've annexed the, he's referred to it as a written report of James Marwick, who is an experienced counsel. He sat as an independent inspector himself. And you will see that in summary at paragraph 2, he concludes the following, that I'm of the clear view that the registration authority is entitled to determine the application on the papers without holding a non-statutory inquiry, and that the application site, say for the footpath, ought to be registered as a town or village green on the basis of the matter set out in his advice. And he goes on to say there's no obligation for a registration authority to hold a public inquiry, and that the registration authority is entitled to summarily determine an application where it is clear on the papers that an application ought to succeed or fail, and adds that he considers that it would be an artificial exercise to require any further evidential process for the applicant to prove that long-standing open space for recreation by local residents has been used for that purpose in circumstances where no objection to the application had been raised. So, in essence, that is why I prepared that report with the recommendation contained in 12. So the recommendation being that the licensing subcommittee for town and village greens approves the application and directs that the application land be added to the council's register of town or village greens. I don't think there's anything I can usefully add at this stage, Chair, unless you or any of the other committee members have any questions of me. I'll do my best to answer them. But that essentially would be my submission.
Thank you. There's someone to speak. Ray, want to?
Yeah, just to clarify that I have attended the training on this, and I'm really pleased that the authority has taken the decision not to go to the expense of holding a public inquiry. And having read the report in detail and seeing there were no objections, especially from the landowner, I have no hesitation in recommending that this be added to the register.
Councillor Parish?
I agree. I've read the report and we've had advice given to us now. The landowner, has just been said, has no objection. There have been no objections from the public. So I think this is straightforward. I see no objections whatsoever in granting this village green status.
Thank you, Councillor Parish. I'm of the same opinion. I again undertook the training back some time ago, and I think we should just accept it. Should we, do we need to move it, or?
I move that we grant village green status to this application.
Thank you. Seconded. Like I said, I'd like to end this morning's meeting and thank everyone once again for attending. Thanks very much. Bye now.